And recording.
She brought us down with the card on my desk.
5 minutes early, you are.
Yeah, the study TV had it.
I was out there earlier and I decided to go out and do it. And I came back in the after school traffic and thinking, this was a bad idea.
afternoon. Thank you very much for making the effort to be here. We know that it's not always easy to get to campus, so we really appreciate the effort you made to join us this afternoon. For those of you that I haven't met before today, I'm part of the Division of Philanthropy Leadership team here at UNSW. My name is Jane Miller. I head up the Alumni and Engagement team. It's my privilege to welcome you here today. So the purpose of today's session is to make us more comfortable talking about philanthropy at UNSW. In a nutshell, that's it. So that we, in advance of the major inaugural fundraising campaign that we will be going live with probably end of next year, it's important that we all get very comfortable talking about the impact of philanthropy, the kinds of philanthropy people can get engaged with here at UNSW, and how to have those conversations. So leading the session today, we have Kathy Duff, our fabulous consultant from the US. Kathy knows UNSW quite well now. She's been, I think this is your fifth trip?
It is my fifth trip.
Fifth trip in about a year, 18 months that you've been working with us. So Kathy understands our culture very well. Kathy is a very experienced philanthropy consultant, having driven several campaigns herself in the US. And so we're very fortunate that she's helping us. So that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Kathy and we'll get started.
Great, Jane, thank you so much. And I want to reiterate Jane's welcome. We're very happy that you're here. Not only are we hoping that we will talk about philanthropy in a conversational way, but I invite you to join the conversation. This is not a session that I will be sharing some different concepts, but we've designed for about half of it to be exercises and half of it to be a discussion. I will refer back to the pre-reading that we sent you ahead of time, but if you did not have the chance to listen, don't worry, there's still time. You can still go back and listen, but we will talk a little bit about some of those key concepts. If you did listen to the tapes, you know that I like to start every conversation with a reflection. It allows us to kind of set the stage for what is it that we are hoping to do. So the reflection for this session, as a rule, we find what we look for, we achieve what we get ready for. And so really where we are, UNSW, in its preparation for its first campaign, is we are ramping up and we are really getting ready. And so this is our fourth session today. We're doing about 14 sessions this week. So we started this morning with a group of volunteers that serve on the board. We had the management board, so we had both the chancellor and the vice chancellor with us this morning as part of those discussions. And then this afternoon we had about 40 faculty members in the room, and we will continue to see different stakeholders throughout the week. What we are hoping is that through these different conversations that we're going to learn from you as far as what are the things that you gravitate towards, what are the conversation pieces that are strong, and what else might we do to get ready. The other thing is we will compile some of the information that you share, and we'll be sending out a follow-up to make sure that we capture. So really going back to this, we find what we look for, which is we are looking to build the success of UNSW, and we know that we will achieve more when we have discussions like what we're hoping to do today. How many of you have heard about, in one way or another, the term campaign when it comes to UNSW? So a little bit? Okay. So what I want to do here is I just want to talk a little bit. I'm not going to spend the whole time, but we have one slide that we want to talk about. What is a campaign and why is a campaign important? And the first thing I'm going to say is that a campaign is an internal word. It tends to be something that we talk about. We know that for donors that have been involved with a lot of organizations, that they may be familiar with the term as well. But we don't usually go out and say, UNSW is in a campaign. What we do want to talk about is why is philanthropy important to the institution. And when we look at where UNSW is as an institution, for a lot of our alumni and a lot of members of the community, they don't understand why we need philanthropy. They may say that, when I went there, it wasn't something that was important. Isn't the government helping, or why are these things? And so a lot of that is how do we change the perception of what their UNSW was to what UNSW is today. And one of the reasons why I'm most passionate about this topic is that my own alma mater went through this exact same thing. We finished our first campaign. They just finished it now about 2 years ago. But it really changed the tone in the way that we were able to talk to our alumni and our community stakeholders about why philanthropy was important, but more importantly, why UNSW now? Why is it now that people should come on board, and what is it that we want to talk to them about? And so that we know that certainly that most organizations that have gone through a campaign, a strategic plan is a critical element, especially for those that work in business. They're going to say, we have a strategic plan in our business. Why does the institution not have one? So Strategy 2025 is a really wonderful platform for us to be able to talk about that there is a vision, that there are clear priorities, and this is where the institution is going, and this is where we're evolving to. A lot of folks that would be prospective donors or that might want to give want to know that UNSW is going in a stable direction. The other thing that we know that campaigns really do is it allows us as an institution to get clear on our messaging. And so right now you may read about different things that the institution is doing. When we get to the point that we're in the public phase, which means that we have shared openly that fundraising is very important to us in a much broader way, you will see a consistency in messaging. And that is something, too, that a lot of times philanthropy is kind of this afterthought, or engagement is an afterthought. And when you go through a campaign, it is really putting kind of a spotlight that fundraising is a part of who our identity is now and who we are going to be moving forward. And so being able to look at that is really important. There will be key priorities that we are fundraising for, welcome. And that we also are going to be looking for how is leadership going to talk about these priorities. And so we're going to expect that when leadership is out talking about the campus, or they're talking about different programs, that we will hear some consistent messaging. And that was one of the things that we talked about with the management board this morning. Campaigns allow us to have focus and alignment. It allows us to ensure that all of us are on the same page. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to ask questions. Sometimes in a campaign, or as we're building our fundraising priorities, new things will emerge. So it doesn't mean that we're saying that whatever we talk about today is it. It actually supports this evolution. But a campaign, one of the biggest things that we see, especially in Canada and the US, who are, they've done a lot more of this campaigning, is it builds philanthropic sustainability. And what happens to a campus when you start to infuse private dollars into it, there becomes this not, I don't want to say a need, but we see a consistency of how this is going to work. Well, sometimes we'll see fundraising organizations go like this. And a lot of times once someone has been through a campaign, because they have set foundational elements in place, you want to see a sustainability, which means that the campus knows that year after year there is going to be this wonderful private support that comes in. It certainly gives us an opportunity to engage all of our constituencies, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And the other thing it really does is it creates an urgency. And it's not an artificial urgency. It's being able to say that over this course of time, we hope to accomplish the following things. And so again, getting to that why UNSW, why now, it really kind of puts an exclamation point behind that, and that is important. And so it allows us to be able to share with our critical stakeholders how their philanthropy will make a difference now. And when combined with other philanthropy, how that will allow us to move the organization forward. So I'm going to just spend a couple of slides. The pre-material talked about an overall donor cycle. And what I did want to share is that there's a couple of places, especially where volunteers and volunteer leaders are incredibly powerful when we think about the different role that you can play. And one is in the beginning, when we talk about identification and being able to share with us, and we'll talk about ways to do this as we go through the discussion, is how do we bring folks forward, and where is that comfort level to do so? And so I do want to highlight that from the presentation, that that's something that we want to look at. And then a lot of it is at the tail end. You all can talk about UNSW with incredible passion. And that's something that when we can partner that with the structure of fundraising is a really nice partnership. People know what I'm hired to do. Okay, so when I come to set up a meeting, they know that my job is to raise philanthropic dollars for the organization. When we can bring you to come forward and tell your story, and that's really what a lot of about today is how do we tell our story in a compelling way to get folks excited. And so this next slide is the only slide that you will see twice, because this was in the materials that we sent you, but I wanted to go through it again, because a lot of what we do is the first thing is we identify. And when we talk about identification, that doesn't mean that you call me or you'll call Jane or you call Allie and say, hey, I think you should go talk to so-and-so, and then I'm going to say, Tim suggested that I call you, and when can I pick up the check? It is not that type of relationship. It's not meant to be crass. We need to build that trust that you can see that we are building a relationship on behalf of the institution, and that when you refer someone to us, that we know that there's that trust, and how are we going to do that? But that identification is key, because that's really the first step to bring someone into a relationship. Then we talk about introduce. And for those that are going to give, they need to know who we are. So how are we going to introduce them? And I thought the Vice Chancellor made a very important statement this morning. And he was talking that a lot of people know the UNSW when they were here, and they may not know the UNSW of who we are today and where we are going. And how are we going to introduce that, and that they can see that this is an institution that is very forward thinking and that we're on the move. Hopefully Strategy 2025 is a foundational piece to that, but what are some of the other elements that we have that bring? And so when we introduce, the next stage is we want to create interest. Because when we create interest, we also know very few people are going to support us philanthropically if they haven't been introduced, they don't have an interest, and then this involvement piece is critical. And why the engagement team is so important in the work that they do and do with you is that we know that those who volunteer and those that are invested in an organization are more likely to support them privately as well. And then this is where, if I were to ask how many in the room are comfortable, I said that we were going to go out and would you ask someone for money on behalf of UNSW? How many people would say, yeah, I'm comfortable with that? Okay, thank you. I always have one in the room that's like, yeah, that's me. And then if I say, who's not comfortable, I'm going to have some as well. And I understand that. For most people, when we say talking about money, there's that kind of that pullback. Yeah. Well, and that's where, and thank you, because that's where we want to go, is if I were to say we would like to invite you to join us, to join our donor family, or if we wanted to extend an invitation for you to become more engaged in the university, is that something that feels better than saying I'm going to go out and ask someone for money? Yeah, and so that's how we want to think about it. There's a couple things that I'll point out from the session, but what we're going to ask you to do is we want you to invite others to join us on this incredible journey. Now, Ken will go out and he's going to be bold and he'll talk about the money. The good news is, though, that we have a staff, and the staff's job is for me to be comfortable in talking about money. But if you will help and you invite someone into a discussion, that is so much more meaningful. And so a lot of that is how do we bring people in? Because I will tell you that most people are pretty comfortable in talking about their giving. They're pretty comfortable in sharing where they give, how they give, what is important to them. Was that again?
Is there a cultural difference though? I'm not sure. Is that your experience here in Australia?
I would say with most people that are choosing to give, they are comfortable. Now I'll put a caveat that a lot of what we do at an institution that is newer to fundraising is that we educate about the power of philanthropy. And so even, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what about the people who don't know that they can give and want to give?
Yes.
But we know that they should and can.
Yeah. So I'm going to take those different words and separate them a little bit, because what we talk about is people that can, they have capacity. And that means that they have whether some of us are raised in a way that we're going to give a certain amount back. Others will get a windfall or something very good in our life will happen and we will choose to give. So the should is that I have capacity. So much of the work that we do is try to identify what is the propensity. And what I mean by propensity is, do they want to give? And if they want to give, do they want to give to UNSW? And so a lot of times when people will say, you know, Kathy, what is it that you do for a living? Or you go out and you ask people for money. I say, no, I actually have the joy of educating people about the joy of giving. And if we can then educate about giving, people will want to do it. And I'll just give you a story that when I come in, it's not uncommon that the Uber drivers usually will ask where I'm from and why I'm here, because I guess my American accent stands out. And so I always say, oh, I'm here to work with UNSW this week. Oh, well, are you a teacher? No, I'm not. I'm a fundraiser. And really? And I've got to tell you that the conversations, and I will ask, have you ever made a gift to UNSW? Because I have a lot that will tell me they're alums. But this particular driver said, I didn't even know I could give money to UNSW. And that is a normal, so when we talk about the cultural thing, this is an institution that giving is new. It is still a really new concept. And so part of that is just how do we help educate? And so the invitation is, how do we bring you in? I've got a beautiful front row seat right here. How do we bring folks in? And that's the part of, I think, the education piece and the cultural piece. But usually, once you've started talking about philanthropy, or you talk about giving, and you will ask someone, have you ever made a gift? And they'll say, oh, well, my family supports my kids' school, we support our church, we support the Humane Society, we support this, we support that. People, if you will start that dialogue, usually are very forthcoming. What happens is most of us are uncomfortable to start that discussion. And so part of it is even to be able to say, have you ever made a gift to UNSW? Have you ever thought about making a gift to UNSW? What would motivate you to make a gift to UNSW? If you were invited to join our donor family, would you want to do that? As one of the things as fundraisers is we try to get more comfortable and say, you know, Tim, I'm curious, do you and your family make your giving decisions together? And you may say yes, no, this or that, and I may say, do you mind if I ask where you choose to give to? And if I don't hear UNSW on that list, then I would say, is there anything that UNSW could do in the future that might motivate you to make a gift? And so a lot of it, again, hopefully none of that is sounding aggressive. I hope that's sounding conversational. And what we're trying to do is that I find that when we enter this dialogue with prospective donors or people that would give, they are very forthcoming. They will share a lot of things with us, but the most important thing is how do we get that invitation on the table? And so it may be that you invite them to join you at an event that you're going to. It may be when was the last time that you were on campus, because we find, especially at institutions like this, that if people haven't been back, they are absolutely shocked. I'll tell you, I haven't been here since October. And the difference in the construction from the last time I was here to now is absolutely, it is motivating, it is exciting, it tells you this campus is on the move. And that there's some things that are really pretty cool. I got here at 7, there were no students. I love seeing students, but this morning I saw a whole cadre of construction workers and they had energy. And so part of that is how do we share that, how do we invite people back? And once we've had the opportunity to invite people, then we encourage them and invite them to invest. And so it's just a different way of looking versus I'm going to ask you for money. I want to invite you to join us on this journey and where it is that we're going. So I don't know if that answers your question, but okay. So what I'd like to do now is talk just a little bit about roles. And we look to all of you. You are invited today because we look to you as leaders. And we appreciate your leadership. We appreciate what you give to the campus. And so when we think about ways that you might be able to help us, is to think about how many of you sit on other boards or other foundations. And you sit there and all of a sudden you find out the person next to you is a UNSW alum. Or maybe they're a parent that's coming in for a new student. We hope that you will talk about your affiliation with UNSW with pride and excitement, because that's a lot of the battle for us, is that when people will start, we can create a buzz. People, really, Tim, why are you involved? Ken, what is it that you do there? I want to hear more about that. And they get excited about that, because a lot of them don't know they can volunteer for us. A lot of them don't know that there are those types of opportunities, and when we can start sharing that, that's a big piece of it too. So if you can think about who it is you know, and then we're going to go through a couple of exercises during our time together this afternoon that will hopefully allow us to become more conversational. So then when you think about the Office of Engagement and Philanthropy and the work that we do, We are here for really two reasons. And the first is, how do we build relationships and lifelong relationships? If you think about an alum who's going to graduate from the institution when they're 23 or 22, we could have a relationship with them for 40 or 50 or 60 years. And so when we talk about building these relationships, it is not about a gift. It is about, what does this relationship look like with the institution that will then lead to someone choosing to give and then hopefully continuing to give. So that's really the role of our office, so the Office of Philanthropy, is to build relationships and then to solicit philanthropic gifts. And both of those require engagement. They require the involvement of a lot of different folks. One of the things is that we know, if someone has at least 3 relationships at an institution, their giving is higher, which means that it is very helpful when they have a relationship with one of you. It is very helpful when they know a faculty member, they have a relationship with leadership, or they have a relationship with someone in the engagement or philanthropy team. Those things actually expand. And one of the things I love this morning is the Vice Chancellor challenged his management group to expand those relationships, and how are we going to be more collaborative in how we bring these relationships forward. So when you think about your role and what it is that you do, how do you think that you can help us move philanthropy to be a greater conversation point? Yeah, make it comfortable. And that's hopefully one of the things that we'll see, because you're already doing a wonderful job in the way that you work with us. And so how do we make it more externally focused, and where is that comfort? And so yeah, and we will do everything that we can. We also need your feedback on what is it that, are the things that we're doing, are they helpful? How can we be more helpful? What it is, do you need tips? One of the things that one of the groups, the volunteer group that we had in this morning, someone said, I only know the projects in the faculty area that I'm in. How do I learn about the other great things that are happening across the campus? And so John was taking notes, and he said, you know, one of the things that we will make a better attempt at is being able to share that, so that you have more exposure to some of the different things that we're doing, because that builds comfort too. And so we'll be looking for those things. What else can we do? Other things that perhaps that we can do to better engage or share? Going. Come on, someone. All right. Yeah, so thank you. It is so important that we are able to share with people how their giving makes an impact. We know that when we can not only say thank you, but be able to share with people how their giving made a difference, that they will move. And so some of you know that I'm from California, and one of the things that when the last campus that I worked on, we were moving towards our second campaign, and we would talk to people about how philanthropy had made a difference. And I would say, imagine San Diego without the Rady School of Business. And that was, the University of California, San Diego had never had a business school on its campus. And there was an excellent business school across town. And they wanted to have a business school that was different, that was really management focused. It was made completely through philanthropy. And so when we talked about the difference of where our campus was today versus where it had been, same thing with the Skaggs School of Pharmacy. Where there was not a pharmacy school in San Diego, and a donor family came forward and helped establish that. And so we were able to tell those stories as we were moving forward. So I agree, it is really important. It was interesting that one of the gentlemen this morning said there's a building that he walks by every time he's on campus. It has a name on it. He knows that philanthropy was involved, and he has no idea what the story is. And so we took notes and said, and I wish I could, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name, but that was a beautiful example of how are we sharing that with you? Because it is pretty impressive when you can walk around campus and point out that, you know what, this program lives in this building, and we had an alum just like you who chose to invest in the campus and do this. And so yes, we need to look for ways to tell stories. After you leave today, if there are other things that you think of that we can do not hesitate to reach out to Allie, to reach out to Kate, to reach out to Jane, to reach out to John, because we really want to make sure that this conversation is not a 2-hour session today. It is, how do we continue to make this conversation alive? So when we, yes. I'm sorry, can you say that again?
The last example you gave, it's like 101. So why hasn't that happened before? Why isn't that story on that building? Why isn't that?
Yeah. So are you asking why that's important, or?
I'm just saying, why hasn't happened?
Why does it take so long to get
Yeah.
relationship?
Pretty simple.
So do you,
This is what campaigns do. They bring things into focus. You know, fundraising, obviously. Philanthropic gifts have been happening at UNSW for a few decades. You'd be aware of it. Have we had a sharper focus on getting our house in order, getting organized until now? No, we haven't. I mean, this is about getting that kind of housekeeping right now.
yeah, and I think a big piece too is what you'll see is how are we sharing that with faculty? How are we sharing it with students? When I look at campuses that what we call have a culture of philanthropy, that we're educating people about the importance of giving, we're talking about that when students walk in the door, the importance of giving, how we celebrate them when they graduate. These are all things that I think at UNSW that are still relatively new, but they're important. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but we know that role modeling is a very important part of people giving. People give to things where there is success. They are going to give to things that they believe are moving needles, that they believe are bringing things forward. They don't give to need. So if I go to someone and I say that we can't have this program unless you make a gift, chances are we might get a gift once, because someone will say, okay, I think that is important. That needs to happen at UNSW. But what happens then is they're like, okay, how come you all haven't figured this out? Why are we being asked to, quote unquote, bail you out? People give because they want things that are aspirational. They give because they want to see a program be a first of, a best of, an only of. They want to see that if maybe we're 10th in the country and we're going to move to 5th, or that maybe that we haven't been doing research in a certain area, and that philanthropy will allow us to do research in that area. So a lot of times when we think about people giving, it's because they want to make a difference. They want to see, the phrase that we use in the States, I used it with one of the faculty members this afternoon, is that we leave camp better than we found it, which means that we're looking for a way, how do you make something better? And that a lot of times, people are giving for impact. And one of the things that is really important is how does UNSW share that impact? And so the conversation we had with some of the faculty, and we had a table over here, and they admitted that they don't like to spend the money that they get, that donors give, because they save it as their rainy day fund. And it's a thing that perhaps they want to be able to, when something isn't right. Well, how would you feel if I came to you and you said that you had made a gift 3 years ago, and I couldn't demonstrate to you how the institution used it? How likely are you going to be to want to make another gift to us? And so a lot of what we do is how do we make sure that we are able to demonstrate impact? Because most of us give because we want to impact change. Most of us give because we want to see a difference. Most of us will give because there's something that we believe that gift will do that is going to lift something up, it's going to grow to a program. And so being able to do that is important. So, yeah, Tim.
Cope with people that say, well, the government should be funding this?
Yes, in our dream world,
That's a big, well, does happen.
it does, but I think at most institutions that model is going away. And so the reality is that if we want UNSW to be the very best that it can be, this is one of the ways that will be impacted. And again, I came from an institution that when I went as a student, 85% was paid for the state of California. By the time I left that institution as a fundraising professional, 6%.
So what is it here? What's the figure here?
Do you?
I've heard of other universities. What's the what, sorry? What's the government funding versus private ratio? For the whole university. Yeah, it's going down in all universities, right?
We,
40 which way? 40 government? Okay.
we'll make sure, Helen, we make sure that we have that in the follow-up, and we'll make sure that we get that number.
No, I only know because I've heard from another university figure similar, and I was shocked because my view was, oh, it'll be 80% government funded. You're right.
Yeah.
International students are about 700 mil. So.
Yeah,
So what
so that's
percentage of international students? Like, can we just put the raw?
How you
30%
mean sort of
international
the
students? Probably
perception
32%.
fundraising in Australia as opposed to in
Yep.
North America, because it's still sort of
Yes.
So when you say
Yes.
40, sorry, you're saying that those international students provide the 40, or this is on top of that?
Oh, no, I'm saying they're part of 60. They're part of private funding.
So the question that Natalia asked is what is my perception of fundraising in Australia versus the States? Is that correct? What I will usually say is the US has been doing this for a long time. And that doesn't mean that we're any more sophisticated at it, but we've certainly been doing it a long time. And so when I use the word campaign, that is just part of the vernacular. I mean, it's expected that if you are supporting an institution of higher education, that campus has been through it. I think, and I shared this morning, I think one of the benefits that you have is that you can talk about fundraising or you can talk about philanthropy in a very authentic way. A lot of our organizations created this kind of pay, you give, and we will give back. There were a lot of benefits that were associated, and when I think about giving, it really should be altruistic. It shouldn't be that you're going to get a front row parking spot and you're going to get the best basketball seats and that you're going to get these other things. And so a lot of institutions are having to change the way that no, you don't do any of those things. And so I know, and it's a huge benefit, trust me. And so when you talk about it, I think that rather than looking at one where it is, it's what can you all do to elevate the discussion? Because no matter how long an organization has been fundraising, there are always going to be people that philanthropy is new to them. And even using the word philanthropy is somewhat new. When I use the word philanthropy, and I use it very intentionally, is because a lot of times people will say to me, Kathy, I'm not a Bill Gates. I'm not a person that's going to write that check that is big. And what that allows me to do is say, can I share with you how we view philanthropy at UNSW? And can I talk about the importance of participation? And we would love to have a whole host of Bill Gates that are in a position to support us. But that's going to be a very finite group of people. But if we could move our giving from 5% to 10% to 20%, I don't know what the alumni giving is, but if we could move that needle, imagine what that could do. And what it is that we have to remember that if writing a check for $1,000 is meaningful to me, or $5,000 or $10,000, it's really important. It's how are we making donors feel valued? And so that's where we get to talk about philanthropy and what it means here. And one of the things that I do think is unique for UNSW is that when someone chooses to make a gift here, it is very impactful. It goes a long way. And so that is one of the things that I think donors look for as well, is they want to know when they make a gift that it is going to have a meaningful impact. But then we also need to have a conversation with them. What does that meaningful impact mean to them? If I'm in a conversation with Neil and we're talking about a gift, it is really important for me to ask Neil, if you were to make a gift to UNSW, what would be most important about that gift? What is it that you are hoping to accomplish? Because it really is about, it is how do we make, and you'll see this on a slide in a minute, but how do you make your donor the hero of the story? Because that is really a big piece. So when we think about raising money together, we are asking everyone to think about what their own gift is going to look like, and can you make a stretch? And when I use the word stretch, if it's something that I can easily write a check for, that tends to be more transactional, which means I'm not really thinking about it. And when we are inviting people to join us in making a gift at UNSW, we want them to stretch, we want them to think about it. And so the example I often give when I work with students, because I have the joy of working with students and educating them about philanthropy, and I will ask them, are you willing to give up a Starbucks? Would you be willing to give up a Starbucks every week to be able to help another student? And asking a student to give up a cup of coffee is kind of a big deal. That is a sacrifice. And so that's really, and that's how we help educate what philanthropy is. Am I willing to give up something to move another project forward? And so when we talk about stretch, that's really what we're looking for. When you talk about your institutional affiliation and why you're involved with UNSW, that is going to move people. One of the biggest things is are you proud of your affiliation with UNSW? Yeah, I see people. That is one of the most moving things. When we talk about something that we're involved in, and we talk about it with passion, and we talk about it with excitement, and we get there, people will see that. And they're going to be like, Ken, you seem really excited about your involvement. Why is that? What is it about being involved with UNSW that you love? Which then allows you to role model. And it allows you to talk about your service. It allows you to talk about why you give. It allows you to talk about what you think is important. And people tend to give when they see that role modeling. And so we're going to ask you to do all of these things, to think about how do you invite people in to learn about us. There are tours that go on. There's different events that we do, and we'll talk about campaign events at the end. But there's going to be a lot more events that we will be doing, inviting people, whether it is that you want to open up your home, you want to open up your office, that you want a faculty member to open up a lab, and you will invite some friends to come in and see that. There are so many different ways that we can showcase. So we're going to ask you to do that. If I were to send any of you an invitation versus one of you were going to send an invitation, what do you think the likelihood is of someone opening my invitation versus opening yours? And so we're going to ask, would you be willing to sign something on behalf of the institution? Are you willing to say, hey, there's an event at this lab, and I think you want to come, and I'm going to invite you to be my guest, or I'm going to encourage you to attend. So would you be willing to send emails on behalf of the institution? Are you willing to send letters? And we would have a conversation, Ken, about what your style is and what you would like to be able to say. And then can we partner to help drive some traffic? Peer screenings, have any of you been involved in peer screening? Okay, so peer screening is when we sit down and we might bring a list of a couple hundred, 500, 1,000 names. And it may be that, Dick, you say that I'm really involved in this part of the community, and we might look for alumni or community members that are in that same area. And we're going to ask you, are there people that you know that you think we should know? And again, I'm not going to call and say, Dick said I should call you. It's going to be more just about, hey, there's some people that I think that you would want to share. So sometimes we'll have conversations about that. And then I already know that you're doing this in the volunteer space and how we recruit people and how you suggest. But all of these are things when you're thinking, a lot of times when I meet with volunteers, they'll say, you know, Kathy, I wish I could do more. Let's get out this list and let's talk about it, because some of these things are really, really easy. And it's just a matter maybe we haven't asked you in the past. And so we want to be able to have that conversation. I know for the organizations that I volunteer for, it's important that my time is used wisely. And so these are ways that sometimes by having this conversation, we can do that. So if you think back on that list or other opportunities, what do you think our greatest opportunity for doing a better job of involving you and getting you involved in some of these discussions?
Kathy,
Yes.
I was sort of thumbing forward to see whether it was in your notes anyway. But when you're talking about telling a story, one of our greatest opportunities, of course, is the 60,000 living, breathing, occasionally annoying millennials that wander up and down the steps. What's really annoying is when they drive with their headphones on. Must be getting old. Young people driving with headphones on really pisses me off. But any success I've ever had in raising money previously, I bring in somebody in their 70s and stand them next to somebody who's 19 and really impressive, who live in the same college, and then stand back and let it go. We've got this extraordinary resource.
Correct.
Unbelievably impressive young individuals.
Correct. And we talked about that earlier today. There have been very few asks that I have done with donors that did not involve either a faculty member, a volunteer, or a student. And one of my favorite things to do is to bring someone who is interested in the campus and let them have lunch with 2 or 3 students and a faculty member. And my preference is to have a first year, and maybe a 3rd year and a 4th year. And the difference that you will see in someone as a first-year student and the way they talk about their uni experience versus someone who's a 4th year, a lot of times people are going to get very excited about that. So I absolutely agree that it is important that we're in a position to share our stories, but sometimes sharing a story is having that person right at the table to be able to talk about that. Now, I will say that I think of you all as being part of that story as well. That there is a difference for those who choose to give their time. And when you can get up and talk about why this is so important to you, that resonates. We know there's some stats that if a fundraiser goes out and let's say I was going to ask you, Neil, for a gift, versus if a volunteer went and asked in that same conversation we went together, or a university leader. you will see that the gift levels are very, very different. And so there is a method to some of our madness in this, but we also know that you come across as very genuine, you come across as authentic, your story is real. And I think what we can do as those who are on the philanthropy team and engagement team is we're very passionate. We will be very passionate, but what you bring is, whether if you were an alum, you bring that piece of the story. If you're someone from the community who now has chosen to become more engaged, that is a story too. And so both of those are really important things to hear. You'll see on one of the slides coming up that there's a validation involved. And that is part of it too. People want to know when they are making a gift. They want to be validated that making a gift here is a good decision. And so your, for lack of a better word, that endorsement is something that can be very, very powerful and very important. Other thoughts on this? Okay, I will keep rolling. So I want to talk a little bit about meetings. And I know that right now I'm doing a lot of this, but in a minute we're going to shift so that there's a better balance. But when we think about going out and talking with our donors, a lot of times we are so excited to share everything on at the institution, throw all this stuff at them. And what is more important is that we have an intro and we talk about that excitement, but then we need to ask them some questions. And so one of the questions that I really love is that it's not uncommon that we will ask someone, can you tell me a little bit about your UNSW experience? And what I'm going to say is let's change that just a little bit and say, what is the most meaningful part of your UNSW experience? Because when I ask you about your experience, that is incredibly broad, and you can go lots of different directions. But when I ask you, can you tell me a little bit about your most meaningful experience at UNSW? They're probably going to talk about a faculty member. They're going to talk about a student advisor. They're going to talk about a club that they belong to. And that allows us to start honing in on what is it on the campus that they really care about. What are the things that are important to them? And so that is a big piece of what we do, is that we want to ask questions because we are making a match. And so if I'm talking to Neil, and Neil says that he's really interested in one of our sports clubs or athletics, I want to probe a little bit to learn a little bit more. But if I don't take the time to ask the questions, then I may just start telling him my whole story. And that's not going to be where the match is. And so I want to be able to ask questions that allow me to invite you into the part of the campus that you care the most about. And so the power of questions, really, really important when you are out talking to people. Make sure that it's not, that we do want you to share your story, but we also want you to ask questions so that they can see themselves either in your story or you can role model another story for them. And I share that because in just a minute we're going to go into the first exercise of what we want to do this afternoon. The other thing, and we know that people are moved by stories, they also need to know what is that solution in that story. What is the impact of that story? And where and how are they going to be a part of that story? And so being able to demonstrate to them is really, really important. So what I would like to do on your tables, there's a stack of paper that's upside down. If I could ask you to go ahead and pass that around. We are going to ask you to do an exercise with us that will allow, yeah, you're going to have to come on up. So I can put a chair right here. So when that's okay. We're just happy that you're here. So when we think about how we create excitement, so one of the things is that we're going to ask you through this exercise is to think about how you would talk about UNSW. So when we want to talk, really one of the most important things is we need to have a hook. Excuse me, I always want to be in a position that if I'm talking that there's a hook that you are going to ask me about. There's something that will continue that conversation, so I'm not just talking towards you, but that we're talking with you. We also know that we need to be succinct. If I were to go on for 10 minutes about all of the great things, I'm probably going to lose you somewhere between 30 seconds and 60 seconds. And so I need to be succinct and be able to get that out. I need my statement to be compelling, and I want it, again, to generate some questions. So when we tell a story, some of the things is, why is UNSW important? Okay, why is now important? We talked about this is UNSW's time. Why is that important? What is it that we are solving? So whether that's something in the area that you serve, how is the donor the hero? What is it that they can do that's going to move it forward? All of these things are things that I would like you to take into consideration. So what I would like to ask at each of your tables right now to do this individually, take the first 2 bullets, and what I'd like to ask is that what are the key words? So if I was going to run into you and we were getting on the lift on level 8, and we were going to ride down the lift to level 1, and I see that Ken is wearing a UNSW pin. And so I say, oh my gosh, you're with UNSW? I'm a UNSW alum. What is it that you could tell me from floor 8 to floor 1 that is going to get me excited about what you do? Because to your point, Natalia, you were saying we want to be comfortable. And so we're hoping that this exercise and talking through some different words that we might use will help build that comfort. So if you could do just numbers 1 and 2, what key words would be included in your vision statement? So what are the words that you think are important? And then and this, I use this more of some of our academic partners, but then what words might you replace that create emotion and excitement? So if you'll just take a couple of minutes to do the first 2 bullets, then we're going to continue. We're going to have some group discussion about those words, and we'll continue through the exercise.
So you're talking about university as a whole.
Great question. You can choose for your particular area that you serve in, or you can talk about the institution as a whole. I think you'll see through it that both, either way you do the exercise, I think will be meaningful for what the group hears. A great question. Okay. And one of the things, a housekeeping tip, I forgot to mention with this group, you may have noticed I have a hearing loss, so that's why I'll walk directly to you. And I'm sorry, a couple of things you've said I didn't quite pick up. I just need you to, a little bit louder will help me. So what I'm hoping to do is would a few of you be willing to share one of the words that you wrote down? And I just want to hear a few different ideas of things that people that they wrote down. At the top, yeah. Just give me something at the top from what keywords do you think would be included?
Surprising.
Surprising? Okay. One of the things, that's the first time I've had that word today. So, but I like that because I think a lot about what we're talking about with UNSW. People are surprised. they are surprised about this institution and some of the really good things. And it's not because you shouldn't be accomplishing that. It's because sometimes it's a secret. We haven't been going out there and talking about it in a broad enough way, or that people haven't heard about it. So I love that word, because when you say whether I think you'd be surprised or some of the things we're doing are surprising, I want to know right out of the gate what that is. And so you've already heard me just that one word. You don't even need to say anything else, and I want to know where you're going with that. So great, great word. Others?
I put hand in mind, which is our motto.
Yeah, well, so
Engage us.
yeah, so I love that you've got something that speaks to who we are, but also where we're going. And so that's a really important part of honoring our tradition, but also thinking about what does that mean? And what it may mean for me then and what it can mean for me now really sets a beautiful stage. So I love that as well. Others?
Inspiring.
Inspiring. And that was a word that we heard this morning. And inspiring is one of those words that we hear a lot, and it still carries a lot of weight. And we want to know whether we find that our students are inspiring, our faculty are inspiring, our leadership is inspiring. There's a lot of different ways to then be able to play off that word and talk about what are some of the different inspirations that we see, or what are the inspirations that we see coming. Also when we talk about inspiring. So also a really good word. Can I get one from this table over here? Yeah, Neil. Say it again.
Opportunity.
Opportunity. Okay, so opportunity is one of those words. People invest in opportunity. People give to opportunity. And it's then our job to really be able to demonstrate what does that opportunity translate towards. And so that is important as well. So what I'd like to ask you now is go ahead to the third bullet in this exercise. And what key words, phrases, or stories do you think resonate with our prospective donors? So when I use the word prospect, that is a prospective donor, someone that would give, or someone that is giving. But what are the words that you think will resonate to someone that you might be speaking to about UNSW? And I'm just going to give you about a minute on this one, and then we're going to go ahead and do another share out, and then we'll move into the table discussion. Oh, okay. I like it. You're already there.
I wrote the elevator.
Yeah. Are you one of those that goes ahead on the homework? Yes. And I should mention, if anyone needs it, because I know we're late in the afternoon, there's coffee, there's tea, there's sugar. If you need any of that, please jump out and get that. Okay, so why might we ask the question, we asked the first bullet was, what keywords should be included in your vision statement? And then 2 bullets down, we say, what keywords would resonate with folks that we are talking to about UNSW? Why do you think that we ask the question now this way?
It's got to be specific to the person.
I'm sorry, Simon, can you speak?
It's got to be specific to the person you're engaging with.
Thank you. Yes, a lot of times what will happen when we think about our elevator speech or our lift speech is we're thinking about all the things that we care about and all the things that we want to share. And when I think about what is going to resonate to the person that I'm with, I am already switching to them. And that's really an important piece of the listening and how we invite people in, is how are we going to respond? And so I often joke, I'm a subjective fundraiser, which means that I really like telling the stories and I like doing that role modeling. If I am in the lift and I get in on floor 8 and I start with some of my more touchy-feely type of descriptions, and I have someone that they don't respond to that, if I can see that, then I may need to change and be a little bit more data-driven, or I may need to be more specific. And so an important piece, and one of the things I love about this work, is that we all have our natural style and the way that we're going to do things, but when we can expand that style and really resonate to who we are with, the conversation that you are having about UNSW will be much more meaningful for that person. you are putting them in the middle. And so it's not just how fast can I tell you everything that I think is great about UNSW, but by taking a moment and thinking about what are some of the word choices that I think will invite you into a conversation, we have the opportunity to move that conversation further. So a lot of times the words can be the same, but am I thinking about how I'm going to invite Michael into a conversation, or am I thinking about just all the things that I want to spill on the table? So what I would encourage you is to think about how is it that what we are saying will invite people in. So what I would like each table to do now in your table groups is to talk a little bit about those words. And I did see that some of you have already kind of gone down and written this final piece. But what we're going to ask is for each table to come up with a statement or a couple statements that we can share with the other table. Then I'm going to ask to collect all of these. Of the different training sessions we're doing this week, I think we have 8 groups that are doing this exercise. And we are going to compile all the different words and all of the different statements and send them out to you as a follow-up so that you can kind of see all the different ways that people approach this. So from our management board to our faculty, to different volunteer groups, to others that are coming through the training. So I'm going to give you, I'll watch the dialogue, but
So the elevator pitch is for the university as a whole, not our faculty?
you may choose. You may choose. And different tables have chosen to do it different ways. In some cases, the table will say, hey, I'd like to try my area. Are you comfortable if we had a table this morning that was talking about Alzheimer's and the research, and she wanted help in building that in that discussion pitch. So we did that. We had others that will look at UNSW as a whole. I'm really open. I'm going to give you about 5 to 6 minutes. I'll watch the discussion, and if it starts to if it's still really invigorating, I'll let you keep going. Otherwise, I'm going to keep the conversation moving. So if anyway, you'll take 5 or 6 minutes at your table to discuss the different things that and then what we're looking for is something that you want to share with the tables. So go ahead and work on that as a group. Thank you. Love seeing the different discussions and the debates, and even I try not to listen too much because I like to hear it when it comes out. But it's fun to hear some of the different words and people debating if that's a word or a strong word. And so it does show you again that some of this is stylistic, and what we may gravitate towards will change. Did any of you hear things that you're like, wow, I've never thought about talking about the campus this way? Good. That's what we want. The whole idea, I can go and write my elevator speech in my office by myself. It's going to sound very, very different than if I come and I hear the perspective of others who also really care deeply about UNSW. It's going to broaden my thought process, and that again is part of that stylistic, how do we invite more people in? And so I would encourage you in some of the groups that you serve in to say, hey, can we sit down and spend 30 minutes talking about how we talk about our work, how we talk about our unit, how we talk about the priorities, how we talk about the dean's leadership, what the things are important. Because in each conversation, you will bring out different things that will expand the way that we talk. So what I would like to ask, it doesn't matter to me which table goes first, but I would ask that the table that is listening, okay, so when we're listening, so let's say this table, they go first, what are the things that you hear that you would gravitate towards? Okay, is there a word choice? Is there a way that something was said? Or is there anything that you heard that perhaps, not sure I would gravitate towards that? And it's just really, there's no wrong or right in this. It's just a way to share. So since I use this table as an example, if I could ask someone to share one of the things and if you wrote it down, terrific. If not, if you want to share the sentiment, we would love to hear.
I think importantly, I've been on the foundation since 1999, so I've been around a long time.
Okay.
Until Jane just told me, I would not be able to say to someone 100% in every dollar you donate goes to that cause.
Yeah.
Because I would have thought there's
Skim off the top.
Yeah.
Right? So from a financial market perspective out there, that'd be really important to
Yes.
most people have lots of choice where they can put money, and if someone's taking 50 cents on the dollar, well, forget about that. But
So kind of boringly, we talked a lot about stewardship, you know. If you drop it with us,
Yes.
100 cents in your dollar is going to get looked after and will go
So-
to impact.
Really important, and this also came up in the topic this morning when someone was saying, how do we talk about that? Or if someone said, you know, there's a lot of nonprofits in Australia, how do we know? The first thing I'm going to say is that universities are dictated by not only the gift agreement policies that we have, but the way that we're accredited, that we are absolutely required that if you say I want a gift to go to medicine, that gift is going to medicine. And we have to be able to demonstrate that. So know that that is behind anyone that you talk to, that we absolutely are very comfortable in being able to share that we're extremely transparent at any time if someone wants, and I've had donors that will come in and want to see the auditing of a particular account that they have given to, and we're not going to advertise, hey, come on in, but we will have that conversation, especially for those that with your background, you were going to look for that. That is going to be something that is really important. And we know that there is a cost to do business, but UNSW has chosen to make sure that every single philanthropic dollar that comes in is going and is supporting philanthropy. So that is a huge statement and one that I would put an exclamation point behind. The other is that we have a very formal gift agreement and acceptance process, which means that before a gift is accepted, it is discussed. And so the conversation that came up with our faculty group is what happens if a gift is questionable? Or maybe it's something, so the example I gave is that when I was working in California, we knew that we wanted to have the very first center on tribal gaming. And gaming in California is somewhat controversial because are we encouraging gambling if we have this center? And what we were saying is no, that we were going to be a top flight research institute to put research out that would support this industry. But we also knew it was going to be controversial. And so before we ever had a conversation with the donor, we had a conversation with what would be the equivalent of our chancellor about, is this something that the institution wanted to pursue? How are we going to talk about this with our alumni base? How are we going to talk about it with our faculty? UNSW goes through all of that same rigor, and it really is important. And so there is a committee that's made up, and there is an approval process. So please know, too, that the UNSW brand is first, and that there's times where an institution will walk away from a gift, and they should walk away from a gift. And I think that's something that you also should have great pride in, that we are not just out there collecting, that we really are true when we talk about our relationships and we talk about our values. So that's something that, as volunteers, we hope that you can feel very confident in, but also ask questions if you want to know more about that. All right, so do I have a phrase or a sentence? I got a great sentiment, and I love that. Allie, you're writing a lot of stuff down there. Is there anything from this table that maybe you've got that you want to share that you wrote?
Yeah, we were basically just talking about, it's kind of like social impact investing. So showing not only where that 100% of your money goes in, but how do you translate that impact? How do you kind of show how that impact lasts over time in an internationally relevant context?
Yeah, and I love the part of impact, and I appreciate Neil brought up the word stewardship. Stewardship is what we do when we thank someone for a gift. A donor relation or donor experience is what we do when we are trying to build a lifetime relationship. And so the conversation with one of your peers this morning was, how are we making sure that we are thanking donors appropriately? And so one of the things that I would encourage you, if you are working with someone, is to ask them, how do they like to be thanked? Because the way that I want to be thanked may be very different than someone else. And there are certain things that we will do. If you give a gift of this size, we know that a letter comes from this person. But that is what I would call that perfunctory stewardship. Now I need to take it to another level, and I need to really get to understand what it is that's going to be important to you. That is also part of that invitation when we invite people to come in. We are going to not just want to talk to them about their giving, but we're going to want to talk to them about how they want to be thanked. And what does thank you mean? Because I've had donors that say, I don't need a letter from the president. I don't need a letter from the dean. I want to meet that student. Or I want to see a faculty member. Or can I come and watch a class in action? That's the best thank you that I could ever have. And so being able to recognize that some ways that we see impact is to actually see it and to be in that classroom or to be on the campus and And so that's one of the things that we can offer as well. All right, so pressure's on for our table over here. Lots of different notes, and there were a couple words that I really enjoyed hearing, so I'm hoping I'll hear them in the comments that you make. But what I'm looking for this table is let's listen to what they say and what do you gravitate towards. Who was my best note taker or scribe in this group? Philip. Okay, I like this. We've got delegation of power at this table.
So, do you want to go, or shall I list the words?
You list the words, please.
So we just...
And I heard there was some great debate about some of the words.
We started off on, Natalia mentioned world leading, and we also talked in her statement about whether it's world leading or national leading. We mentioned genuine partnerships and collaboration, which kind of flips the paradigm from about us to actually saying it's about us and you. So I was bringing them in. We mentioned diversity and sorry, it was some form of diversity. Exceptional diversity, was it?
It was really like this.
Yeah, it's and global advancement. Through diversity and resonating, global resonance of the work that you're going to do.
Excellent. Excellent. It's a mouthful, but I like it.
We had the idea of invention rather than innovation, pioneering, local and international resonate, as Nick mentioned, interdisciplinary,
Yes.
exchange, aspirational, strategic, and then Natalia had a statement that was a...
Okay, we're going to come back to some of those words because I think there's some we want to discuss, but I'll go ahead and let's hear the statement for the group. What do you hear from this table when she reads the statement?
Interesting because I got comments already. Being the chair of art and design, I sort of had my elevator pitch, but I realize that it needs finessing. So, yes, UNSW is ranked 30th in the world of art and design schools. It's amazing for Australia. We're groundbreakers in robotics, 3D printing, data visualization, and traditional studio practice. And there immediately Philip said, you lost me, there are too many things. And Dick then questioned 30th in the world, whoopee, which I think is great. great, but how are we ranked in Australia? So it started that dialogue.
Yeah.
Which is actually number one.
So, yeah.
Would that be better?
See, now what I love, and this is what we're trying to provoke, is that this exact dialogue. Because we have to be careful when we use numbers. Because for some people, 30th in the world would be like, wow. And other people are like, 30th in the world? But then to your point, but it's first in Australia, it's how are people going to respond to that? And so recognizing that and where is that hook? That would be the thing that I would say is in what I heard, where is the hook? What did you all hear?
Well, maybe getting ahead of ourselves, because if I see the USW pin and see the person in the elevator, I'm just going, well, how was your time at USW? What really was good for you?
Yeah. It's a really, I mean, the nice thing is if I've got a pin on and you're asking me, chances are we've already just built this connection. And so we've taken what could be just some stranger in the elevator to all of a sudden now we have a common link. There's something that I don't know yet if you care, but I'm going to guess if you're wearing a pin, you care. Okay, that's going to be an indicator that this is something that's important to you. And so if you've got two of you in the elevator, I know that where I am, these are my school colors. And our city on Fridays, everyone wears red and black. And so you pretty much know, I can be in any elevator. If you're wearing red and black, I'm going to say, are you an Aztec? And so, and that just tends to be, that's part of our culture. Now, it took a long time to get there, to your point, how long. We started that campaign, I think, in 1997 or 98. And now it's just, but we're lucky. Our mayor's an alum, all the county board of supervisors, but it's just kind of the mantra. But that is kind of the way that you build it. So yes, the pin and being able to pull that together can be really important. Any other observations for what you heard? Simon, I can tell you're thinking about it.
Sorry, when the first sort of words were mentioned, it was a lot of words that you see everywhere in every organisation. That's how I felt by like strategic, global,
Yep.
like it's, all those things are kind of true, but they're not, I don't know, they just...
Yeah. It has to be said with authenticity, and I think above everything, it has to be, like, I always, we hear everything becomes a meme, and the person who said it was authenticity, even if you said the 30th and you were completely earnest and like something better in that than just going through those words.
So the important part is how do we build context? And it came up in the conversation with the Vice Chancellor this morning, because he said that one of the things that he'll hear from people is, okay, I could hear that from any institution across the world. And so how is it that what we say is going to make it unique to UNSW? And so that is part of our challenge. Sometimes in the elevator speech or coming down the lift, that is not as easy. And that's where once we've gotten through the elevator pitch and we start the more detailed conversations, that is really where we want to break away. But there are a couple of words that I know I heard you all talking about groundbreaking at one point. Yeah, and that is something that it's a simplistic word, and yet people want to be a part of something that is groundbreaking. But they usually want to know then the context behind how or the why. And so one of the things I like about using that word is that usually people are going to say, all right, why? Or how? And that gives us that opportunity to expand. And so a lot of times we want to look for what are some of those expansion words. Loved partner, partnership, partnering. Anytime that we can do that, because we're not going to get to where the vision for UNSW is without partners. And so being able to talk about that is really important. And asking people how they like to partner or how we can invite them to be a partner is a great way, kind of asking that permission to find out what else would they need to know. So all of these things are good. Again, we will send out all the words, but I would encourage, Neil, your hand up? Yeah.
Yeah, my wife, who has been dragged through UNSW now for 12 years that we've been together, and she thinks that date night is when you go to UNSW and there's something in the roundhouse as opposed to the Sainsbury building.
That is excellent.
She does a lot of functions here. I drag her along.
With grace.
With grace. But she says to me, you know what you say to people from UNSW outside of campus? She said, your default is I always do this. I say, have you been on campus lately? with that light rail and the public domain, how it's changing, and this building here and that sporting building. It's like you've got to get back on campus. You wouldn't recognise it. She reckons that's always my default pitch. And I realise I do it because it doesn't matter what you studied or what your interest was. The physical environment, the infrastructure thing is always a hook.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool when a campus has changed that dramatically, that it now has a vibe and it has a feel. And that no matter what major that you are part of, no matter what you've been involved in, and so I agree with you, that should be the party line out there. Because
my stat is always 4,312 beds on campus.
Okay, well, you lost me somewhere after 4,000, but 4,300. But it is something to be said, and we know, proof in the pudding, when you can bring someone back who has not been here. Even, like I said, I was just here in October. And I cannot believe the difference in being able to navigate around the gate and what was going on versus when I was here. And when I was here in October, and how much progress had been made since July. And so if I can see it in little incremental ways, imagine someone who has not stepped foot on this campus in 5 years, or 10 years, or 20 years, or 40 years. It is mind-blowing. And usually it's mind-blowing with this incredible sense of pride. And that is, again, how are we rekindling the fire? How do we bring people back? And so I do think that one of the easiest things you have is right here. And what I say for those who are fundraising on the international market that are talking to alums that just aren't going to come back, get out my smartphone and walk around and show them this is the activity. Just even me going to lunch today and walking through and seeing all of the students and the energy about lunch and the conversations that we're taking forward, how do you not feel that energy? It's incredible. And so being able to share that and bring it back for people and for them to say, wow, look at the quad and the differences, it really is moving. And so even if people can't get here, how do we take it to them? And there's a lot of ways to do it very, very easily. So yes, Ken.
Another comment about the elevator pitch. It seems to me that it needs to be embodied in some way in the strategic plan for 2025, 2030 plan, because that says a lot of things about why we do things, and it's essentially about education contributing to a better future.
Absolutely, and then we'll make sure that we get that noted, and that feedback I think is important, so thank you. So thank you for participating in the exercise. Usually what happens once we get conversational about the institution is then someone is going to give us an objection, right? We're going to run into someone and they're going to say, oh, no, I don't need to go see that place, Neil, because when I was there, it was such and such. And so part of recognizing that when we are going to be conversational and that we want to communicate, that there are going to be objections that we hear. And the tendency when we get an objection is to think that's a no. Or if we get an objection, we think someone is telling us they're not interested. And what I want to say is probe that just a little bit. Because sometimes when we get the objection, then I can say, you know what? I think you'd be really pleasantly surprised. Take me up on having coffee on campus, and if you still feel that way, then you don't have to come back again. But what we find a lot of times when we get these objections is that it's important to see that people are engaging in the conversation, that please, if someone says something about a faculty member, or they say something about a program, or they say something about the institution that is not the way you feel, don't take that personally. Each of us have had their own experiences, and what I often say is there's a very fine line between love and hate. And if someone has not had an experience, so let's say they graduated 30 years ago, and nobody from the institution has called them, and you are the first person to call and say, hey, there are some mind-blowing things that are going on at UNSW, and I would love for you to come back, they're going to be like, why are you calling me? I haven't heard from anyone at that institution in 30 years. And then they're going to do a little bit of venting. Once that's out, they just wanted someone to listen to them. And as someone who, again, was doing a lot of fundraising for an institution that's very similar to yours, I can't tell you how often I heard that. But once they shared how they were feeling, and then sometimes it would just be, I have been dying to say that for 35 years. Thank you for listening. And then why did you call me? And so recognize that please don't take it personally. We know that we haven't done everything perfectly, But a lot of times, people getting involved with us and being a champion for us and choosing to support us philanthropically means that students of the future are not going to have that same experience that may have happened 10 years or 20 years or 30 years ago. And so that is an important piece of it. But the most important takeaway of this is when we get an objection, that is rarely a no. It is usually that we need to go through the conversation a little bit more. It does give us the opportunity to do a follow-up question. And so when we think about being conversational, we thought that one of the things that would be helpful for the group is to give you what some of the common objections that we think we hear at UNSW. So I'm going to go ahead and, and while we're passing those around, I'm going to collect your sheets so that I can be honest about making sure that we send all of these great thoughts and notes out. But what I would like you at your table is just to go ahead, thank you, Ken, is to go through the objections that we've passed out and just spend about a minute on each one and go ahead and have a conversation. Here's another one, thank you. At your table about how you think you would overcome this objection or what it is that you're going to say. And the one thing that I've learned from doing this exercise earlier today is I do want to say that campaign is an internal word. It is rare that you would have an objection that someone would say is a campaign priority a way to get me. So that was pointed out earlier today that isn't as much part of the vernacular. So if you want to skip that one, you can, or we can still address it. But anyway, if you'll just do a minute per objection, and then we'll do a share out. So what I would love to do is hear, and there was good dialogue. We had good dialogue at both tables, so thank you for that. Is there a particular objection that jumped out for this table? Anything that you really gravitated towards? I heard some conversation, but...
It's interesting what Tim said about number one. It was about having a campaign. It's not about, yes, we want to ask for money. It's showing that we're taking this very seriously.
Yeah. And I would agree that when we embark on this type of initiative, and we're talking about for lack of a better word, the marriage between 2025 and the what we hope to accomplish through fundraising, yes, it is a comprehensive effort. It is something that we're inviting all of our stakeholders to participate in. I love that comment that this is a serious effort. Yeah, this is something that we are really, really committed to, and I think it shows the depth of where we are going and what we hope to accomplish through this. I heard folks at both tables talking about, I don't have any feedback to offer. What were some of the thoughts around how we might be able to overcome that objection?
Well, I said, that's fine. We're interested in what you're interested in.
Yeah. Well, again, what is it that you're interested in? A lot of times when I will ask someone for their feedback and they'll say, Kathy, I don't have any feedback to offer, I'm going to say, you'd be surprised at how often I've heard that. And yet the feedback we have gotten absolutely speak to where we as an institution are now going. Will you please join us in that conversation? People don't want to feel like they're being singled out. And so if we ask someone for feedback, we sincerely want it, but sometimes they're going to feel like we've singled them out. And so by sharing that we are trying to do a better job of asking for feedback and hearing what our stakeholders believe and what they think. Now I'm part of something. And so being able to bring them in can be very, very powerful. I read the materials, but I'm not sure what it is you hope that I will do. I want to suggest that materials can be a way to help introduce what we are doing, but we don't ever want to hide behind them. We are the materials. The conversations that we have and our passion are going to speak more to what the institution is doing, more than we can ever introduce through anything in the written word. And so we will send things to ask people to look at, but when someone says a comment about feedback, please say that we are using that as an introduction for a more meaningful conversation. And that really is what we are looking to do, is to pull that out. I did hear some laughing about, is this about money? Yes. It is really important that if anyone says, is this about money, that we say it is, that the university is really committed to where we are going through philanthropy. And it's okay if you say, we're not going to ask you for a gift in that first meeting. I will often joke and say, if you would like it to be about money, we can really make it about money. But that's where your comfort level is. But if we say it is not about money, how do we make that transition when we do want to talk to someone about a gift? And so much when we talk about building a lifelong relationship is going to be about how we're building trust. In some cases, we'll have to rebuild that trust. And so it is important that if someone says, is this going to be about money, it's okay to say that I really believe that the philanthropic or the generous community and what they choose to give to UNSW really is going to make a difference in where we're going. It's also an opportunity to say, you know what, when I first got involved, I wasn't sure if I wanted to give money because I was giving my time. But I now recognize that I want, as a champion for the institution, I also want to be in a position to make a gift, and our family has chosen to do this, or I've chosen to do this, or we as a couple have chosen to do this. And that allows you to role model, because people are going to be ready to make a gift at different stages. And so being able to introduce that concept is...
Say that might not be, and then continue the conversation.
Yeah. So if...
I think there may be a cultural difference here, just in the Australian context.
Well, there...
If someone says, all he wants for money, or this is just about money, I'm not sure that going back straight away and saying, yes, it is.
So I think it's important to say it's not just about money. Okay? Yes. Yeah. Really important. Yes. Yeah. And so... Yes. And thank you, because it should never be just about money, ever. Okay? When we go back to what is it that we do, First and foremost, we want to build relationships. And then secondly, we hope that many of those relationships will lead to a philanthropic gift. And so when people will ask me, Kathy, what is it that you do? I will say that I have the joy of talking about philanthropy, and that I work with people that want to make a difference at UNSW through making a gift. Some people will choose to do that right out of the gate. Some people may never choose to do that. But what my joy is to introduce what the power of philanthropy is. So yeah, thank you for that clarification, Tim, because it should never, I never want to give the impression that it is only about the money. I think we are really short-sighting what we do as an institution if we suggest that. So appreciate that clarification. But what I'm saying is I do want to be honest that the work that we do want it to lead towards giving. Otherwise, it's very hard to make that adjustment. So thank you for the opportunity for that clarification. So what I'd like to do in our final minutes together is talk a little bit about campaign events. And you are going to see additional activity around us doing events that are inviting people to learn more about UNSW's mission and where we are going. Now, I know that we have been engaged in doing engagement events. When we talk about campaign events, they tend to have a few things. They really are going to be ways that we are going to want to showcase the mission in impactful ways. And so it may be that we're going to invite them out to Sims, and they're going to see one of our ships, or they're going to see the type of research that we're doing. It may be that they're invited to the engineering building, and they're going to hear a group of women leaders talk about what it was like to be part of our STEM program. But then we want to drive action. And so it's very common at an event if we have, and these events a lot of times will be small. It could be the size of the room that we have right here, where someone's going to get up and a faculty member is going to speak or a student is going to speak, and we're going to introduce things. But then at the end, we're going to say, you know, if you've enjoyed what you've learned about UNSW this afternoon, when Jane calls, I hope that you will take a meeting to learn how you can be involved in Strategy 2025, or how you can be involved with the university in a different level. And so we really are talking about how do we drive action. We are not going to get up at these events and say, okay, everyone get out checkbooks. It is going to be talking about the importance of what it is we do, but often we will ask people for that next step. And the next step is, will you come and tour the campus? Will you meet with one of our officers? Will you meet with myself and one of our volunteers? Whatever that may be. We will ask you if you are willing to speak and talk about your level of volunteering and the level of commitment that you have. Some of you will be very comfortable with that, and we'll say, hey, we would love that. Some of you may say, hey, I don't know if I want to speak, but Kathy, I would love to invite 3 of my friends. So are you okay on this is a topic that I care about? Also remember that sometimes because I graduated from a particular program doesn't mean that's the area that I'm going to want to support. I also may have an area that because I really love the performing arts, but I've never been to an engineering event here, and I may come and actually learn there's some really cool things going on. We find that a lot of our supporters, when they are introduced to the multitude of things that we do on the campus, will choose to give to more than one area. And so I would ask that you don't put someone in a box because they've told you that I only care about this particular topic. As they start to see all of the different things, I had a volunteer who would host a cultivation event every quarter. And the first one he did was something that he and his wife were very passionate about. But then he was like, Kathy, I'm learning things that I had no idea were going on in this campus. I want to continue to learn. So we will host something. And so they would open their house once a quarter, and they would host a cocktail reception. And we did everything from a telescope that we had in Chile to we have a CSI program, and so we set up this whole kind of science recreation of a crime scene. We did all these kind of different things. And yeah, and the people were like, this is really cool. I had no idea that this was going on and that our students were doing this. And so we will ask you to help us identify people that you think want to be involved with things that are cool and that want to see them. All of the events that we do will be part of an overall strategy. And we are happy to share that strategy with you, whether that's supporting a particular initiative or it's introducing the campaign as a whole and why it's our time for UNSW. Ask us questions. We'll be happy to share that. And all of our events, we will have metrics and next steps. And so there's a structure that we will put in place to ensure that it's supporting the overall direction of where we are going. These types of events, they tend to be unique. They tend to be personalized. And so it won't be unusual that if someone says, hey, Kathy, I can get my country club for something. And if it's a place that we know that people will go, some of the events that we did were in really cool neighborhoods. And we knew that people were coming first to see the house, and then they would get excited about what we talked about in the house. The hooks are going to have all different shapes and sizes, but what is the hook that we can use to bring people in? So we want to showcase things that people don't know about UNSW. We want people to walk away with these huge wow factors of, wow, I didn't know that we were doing that. And then we're going to say, and go out and tell others. The other thing that's really important about these types of events is that we will follow up, or we will ask you to help with follow-up. If someone's seen something really amazing about UNSW, I can't call them 3 months from now and say, hey, remember that thing you went to? We need to be able to follow up quickly, and so we may ask, would you be willing, if I call and someone hasn't taken a call, can you help? And say, hey, we had asked that night if you'd be willing to meet with Jane or Kathy or Allie or Kate. I'm calling to say, how do we set that up and how do we make it happen? So all of these different things really are conversation starters. We will be looking for ways that we can introduce the cool stuff we're doing, not through sending out a mailer, but inviting people in so that they can see it, they can touch it, they can hear about it. And when they get that experience, again, from our students or our faculty, it can be incredibly meaningful. So there's different things, the way that we will use campaign events, and one of the ways that you can be most helpful is what we call rekindling the fire. And it's when you meet those folks who haven't seen UNSW in a while, how do we get them reinvigorated and have some of the same passion that you are feeling? So we will look to re-engage. We will look for ways to showcase our passion. We will look to perhaps introduce a new initiative. So maybe there's an area, I heard about something in environmental law, that perhaps we are introducing to a group of people for the first time, and we're trying to get a sense, do people think this is exciting? Do they like it? Sometimes we will make decisions about initiatives. If we can't get anyone to engage in the conversation, we may need to tweak what it is that we are hoping to do. So sometimes we are testing different ideas to see how do people in the audience respond. We will ask questions about what did you hear tonight or what did you hear this morning that motivated you or that you gravitate towards, or what do you think we should be talking about in the community? It allows us to move people that would consider giving from maybe knowing nothing about UNSW to getting excited about something. For someone that knows a lot about UNSW and they think about us in a certain way, and now they're going to think about us differently. We will use these events for all of these types of things. And then as we move through the campaign, we love when any of you are willing to get up, because you are leaders. And when you can talk about your leadership and why you are a leader, we hope that is going to invite other people in. We anticipate that it's going to allow us to get more people that want to give. And so a lot of what we do these events, is to bring more people into the fold. We will be looking for new champions. When the campaign gets further along, and we can say, so maybe we're doing something in art and design, and we're at 95% of goal, and we're going to invite people in and say, put us over the top. We know that you want to be a part of something that is going to change UNSW. Donors like to be part of something that is successful. Donors like to know that they are not doing this by themselves. So donors get excited when they see that other people are choosing to support an initiative. So when you can invite them in to join us, all of these things are things that we look at, how are we going to do this? So if you are wondering, and one of the things I love is when any of you will say to me, Kathy, I wish we could do more. What else can I do more for the campus? You can host an event. And we would love to have a conversation with you about what hosting an event could look like. We would love if you would be willing, instead of the invitation to come from the UNSW mailing address, that it comes from your home with your name on it. Because we know that the mail is much more likely to be opened if it comes from one of you. So if you're willing to say, hey, yeah, I'll mail 25 of these invitations, we'll work with you to set up what that looks like. Will you be a champion for us? Just you being here today says that you're a champion for us, and we appreciate that. Thank you. Being able to get up and say, this is why I support UNSW. This is why I choose to volunteer. This is why I care. being able to reinforce, and I mentioned this word at the beginning of the session, your presence and you making statements about the campus and why you think what UNSW is doing is important is validating. It's validating for our alums. They like seeing people like them that care deeply about the institution. And so when you are here and you are talking about that, it is an incredible validation and something that we greatly, greatly appreciate. So we have about 7 minutes left, and this is where you all probably had things that you were thinking about when you came in. Is there anything that we touched that you would like to revisit, or is there anything that you were hoping that we would accomplish in our discussion this afternoon that we haven't covered? This is kind of like an open mic. What do you want to talk about? What did we not get to?
One of the problems I've found is that being involved with art and design and being in medicine, most of my time was spent outside the campus where, like, when I went through here, I didn't recognize it. And so my question is, especially when art and design used to be COFA, and a lot of people know the previous nomenclature, and most of my time was spent at St. Vincent's.
Yes.
How is the discussion? Because I think I was so shocked when I came here today, because I hadn't ever gone here. Yeah, how do you connect the satellite of the university with the physical?
That is a great question. And so one of the things that I like to think about, what are the outcomes that UNSW produces? What was happening in that satellite area that you can talk about? And how do you tie that back to the overall mission of UNSW? So I'm taking the question that you just gave me and I'm throwing it back as a question to you. Recognize that every single person that has an experience here, that experience is going to be, there's going to be slight overlap and there's going to be a lot of non-overlap. And so being able to, I like to be able to, and for a lot of campuses, medicine is a different place. And so how do we talk about that experience? And is there a cohort experience that we want to talk about? Is there something there that, is there power in them coming to campus? What are the different ways? And so is there a hook in that? You just saying that you were blown away, I think that was the word you used, but actually I know I heard that from Neil earlier. But that you were astounded in the difference in the campus, that alone is something that just going out and saying, hey, I'm in medicine, I went to campus for a meeting, holy moly, I can't believe what's going on there. You know what, let's go back, I need to spend more time there. That's a part of it. I think that no matter whether you were off at a satellite or you were here, this place is changing. And in most places it's changing that people are really proud of. And one of the things that we talk about is how do we elevate the power of our degree. And I always joke, I can't get into my alma mater now. It was not difficult for me to get into, and I would not be able to get in there now. And that's a pride point most days. Most days, because I can get in, I just wouldn't graduate. Well, that wouldn't let me out. Yeah. Well, see, you're just so grateful that we want to keep you here. But that means that people are proud because they look at their institution, and when you are kind of that neighborhood commodity that people, it was easy for them to go to, and you look at it now, you should be proud when you walk across this campus in the caliber of students, in the caliber of the faculty, in the caliber of the leadership, in the caliber of what is taking place. That means that the power of your degree continues to grow. And for most people, that is something where it's not top of mind conscious. When you bring it up, they want to have a great deal of pride. So I don't know if it's a pride point that you wouldn't be able to graduate now, but certainly that. The capability of today's students and going. Yeah. So, and there is an energy. So I think that's part of it, is to recognize that medicine still has its own unique medicine, but its own unique energy. But it's pretty cool also to see the energy in some of those different pockets. Other questions or thoughts? Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the importance of story.
Yes.
The question is there a library of stories or a handbook of stories that you can tell across the 10, 20?
So great minds think alike, and one of your peers, Bob, this morning asked that same question, and one of the commitments that we made, because he told a story of, and thank you, Michael, he told a story of that he's like, I walked by this building and I have no idea where it came from. I think I may have actually already told that story in here. But anyway, and so we agreed that we will work on compiling some of these things and being able to share, because we do want you to be in a position to share the successes. The good news, UNSW has had a heck of a lot of successes. You know, when we talk about a campaign, we're not saying that, wow, we need to do this because we haven't had them. You have had enormous successes. The nice thing is we're going to continue. This is a forward-thinking institution that is looking about where it goes. So yes, we don't currently have a library, but it was a great question this morning, and we've already talked about what are some of the things that we can do. This is going to be an ongoing conversation. You will find from the staff and the different folks that you work with that we hope that this wasn't you come for 2 hours, but that we're going to look for ways to continue to inspire and to think about some of these different things. Jane, I think I saw your hand.
I was just going to say that to a degree we already collect some of those stories. Our donor impact magazine that comes out every year.
Thank you.
Is packed full of features with donor stories and about what it is they contributed to and what the impact has been. Maybe it's the format. Maybe we could do something more exciting and make it more accessible somehow.
I think too, I think that Shane Simpson was commenting, another one of our
Correct.
members, was commenting that around demonstrating the impact of, you know, our scholarships for students, for example. And I think because sometimes our advisory boards may not necessarily be donors in a specific area, they don't actually get to see some of those amazing stewardship pieces that we do. So it might be that we try to figure out ways that we might come to our scholarship lunch this year, just to see, just to meet the students, hear how we talk about it, all that sort of thing.
And that's a very important point, because that's what I always found, that, you know, each faculty is quite close, and I think sharing is always good, and I don't see as much sharing. We have that big faculty award dinner.
Well, I was just going to say the alumni dinner.
Or the alumni dinner, but it's, to me, I don't know what anyone else is doing. We're still just a little compartment.
I was going to comment about maybe using Philanthrop and using some things in the alumni dinner that, having had the privilege of attending for a few years, I don't think the university uses it well enough with the guests in the room. So I think that that's something that, you know, really ramp up who is invited to that.
Yeah, and how we talk about what our aspirations are in all audiences. And, you know, I appreciate Jane bringing up the impact, the newsletter that we do, because I'm going to guess that if we were to send it to you tomorrow, you might read it differently now. And that's part of it too, is what are the things that we are looking for? And if you truly are going to be champions, then what are the things? And so we recognize that not only it's kind of like we're building a toolbox. You know, and so what are the tools that each of you will need to be able to talk about? And like I said, you're already doing a wonderful job, and we appreciate it. What we're hoping to do is that we get more comfortable in talking about that philanthropy is a part of our future. It's something that is exciting. It's something that can bring joy for those that want to participate. And how do we just start to introduce that, but then also how do we provide you some of those backstories to be able to make sure that you have information that you know, because there are a lot of really great things that have happened, and so we'll make sure that we look to continue to be able to share those. Annie, I've got time for one more question. Yes?
I like the idea that we need to elevate it, because I think people are wanting to put their money behind higher causes. And I was thinking, if you compare it to charities,
Yes.
and this is a kind of gross generalisation, I haven't thought it through, but it feels like charities are solving the problems of today, whereas universities are really educating people and solving the challenges of tomorrow, which seems like a higher cause. If you're trying to, particularly if you're competing with charities versus higher education, if you can pitch it in a way that's about the challenges of tomorrow, both educating people and researching about the future.
I want you to come up and teach the next class, because that is exactly what it is. I mean, that is exactly, and the nice thing is I don't ever think of charities as competitors. I think of a lot of times those charities are partners. And there's an opportunity, because someone that will support those can also support us. But I agree that higher education, and one of the reasons that higher education is the #1 philanthropy in the world, is because people see it as a way to where are we going? How do I invest in those challenges of tomorrow? And whether we're educating those that are going to be leading, whether we are supporting the research. I mean, I could go on and on and on in the list of what that is. Yes.
So,
please.
Here from the advisory board of the built environment, which tends to focus on design.
Yeah.
We love design. We've got Kofa here. And
Art
design. I'll wash my mouth out. But it feels like, particularly if you're part of medicine, you are clearly helping people. I think somehow, particularly our faculties need to change their
robotics
focus.
and data visualization.
And the built environment's about the issues of rapid urbanisation and sustainable cities. But are we, I think Ken and I probably need to go back to Helen and say, are we pitching the big picture or are we pitching what interests us?
And to be honest, I want you to think about how a donor feels about that story. That's what it is the big picture. I want to know what that big picture is because now you're giving me the opportunity to be part of it. That is exciting. It is invigorating. It's something that motivates me. It moves me. And so those are the types of things. And so a lot of times when we talk about philanthropy and we talk about campaigns, we are talking about dreaming. We are thinking about things that some people haven't yet thought of, and yet we know that we have people that want to invest in what that is. And so let's go on that journey together. And so yes, let's push some boundaries. Those are incredibly important. People are not going to give to status quo. People are not going to give to that need. They are giving to things that are going to really propel, and that's when they get excited. And one of the things about a campaign is that we are creating a real brand around that we are moving, that this is where we're going, and really allows you to be proud.
How do we learn what the other people dream? Because we're just in one room, and I've just thought that I've been in a tunnel vision stuck in our little world, and now I've heard other worlds.
I want to know a little bit.
So I want you to know, this is the beginning of these conversations. Yeah, UNSW is your oyster, Dick, and we're going to open that up so you can see all the different things that are going on. There really are some, and we know that part of that is to do better. Yeah, Neil, and then we're...
I was sitting in an airport in Hong Kong, ready to come back to Sydney, and I took a photograph of this article I was reading in a magazine about how, I said to Chris Stiles at Business School Dean
Yep.
and Mark Hoffman, Engineering Dean, I said, success looks like this, boys. And the article was that someone had come into the Business School Dean at Harvard, 400 mil, got some IPO away and wanted to give back and said, whatever. The dean of the business school at Harvard said, fantastic, but I don't want it. The engineering dean I need you to introduce you to has got this multi-$100 million building that's going to do this, this and this, and that's where your money needs to go. Chris said, yeah, fat chance Mark we ever doing that.
Yeah.
But that's because he had the broader, I know where money needs to go.
Correct.
It's on the table, it's coming, but it needs to go there.
Well, and we always want to look at, yeah, and that's what true philanthropy is about. It's about where can we move the needle, what can make a difference. And 400 million over to be able to do that pop, 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 absolutely does that, and it's important. So what are some of the takeaways? I hope that whatever you were feeling about philanthropy, that you are hopefully feeling more joy about it. Because it really is joyful. One of the things I've loved about being in this profession is sitting down with a couple or sitting down with an individual, and they will say, Kathy, I never thought in our lifetime that we would be able to make a gift like this. And I'm so glad that we were in a position to do this at such and such institution. People really, they'll reflect back, and they will thank you for the opportunity to give and to make a difference. And so it really is something that is joyful. Each of you, your roles is very unique, and we got to hear a little bit about some of that today. Celebrate that. Go out and really talk about it and be able to do that. The campaign and what UNSW is embarking on right now is a game changer. There is no way that this campus will not be different, and different for a lot of really positive ways. And so we know that it is exciting. Continue to discuss your passion. Enjoy this adventure. It is really neat to be a part of the inside when a campus is going through a transformation. like this. And you are going to be able to look back for tens and tens and tens of years and remember that you were part of that movement, that we're talking about philanthropy and giving in a very, very open way. My closing reflection, we wanted to do something meaningful while Vic could still see this. This was a conversation that I had with a couple, and they were actually giving to a medical health sciences type of initiative. But they said, you know, how special it was that they were doing this while they both could see it versus leaving it in a state or their will and not being a part of it. And while we love when someone will put UNSW in their will, we would prefer that they tell us that they're going to put us in their will so we can have a conversation about what that giving and what that legacy looks like. People enjoy being a part of that. So I do want to say thank you very much for being here. Part of the reward is there is a cocktail reception on Thursday night. We encourage you to come back. We anticipate about half the people that are attending the different sessions over these 4 days will be there. So there will be other volunteers there. There will be faculty. There will be Office of Philanthropy and Engagement staff. We would love if you're available to come back and kind of celebrate that we're on this journey together. So we went a couple minutes over, but I want to thank you very much, especially because you were our last group of the day. Thank you for staying engaged. Most importantly, thank you for your volunteering. Thank you for your commitment to the institution. UNSW, I got to tell you, from the quality of folks that I've seen all today, very impressive in where you're going. So thank you.